Taiwan hunched over his cluttered desk, scrolling through auction listings on his battered tablet. The blue glow of the screen illuminated his tired face in the dimness of his small apartment on Orbital Station 9. Outside his viewport, stars glittered against the blackness of space, distant and cold as his prospects. "Nothing worth bidding on today either," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. 3 months since his last profitable salvage run. 3 months of dwindling savings and growing debt notices. The station's rent collectors weren't known for their patience, and his next payment was due in just 10 days. He reached for his cup of synthetic coffee, now cold, and grimaced at the taste. The cheap stuff was all he could afford lately. His tiny apartment doubled as his workshop, with parts and tools scattered across every surface. A half-disassembled navigation unit lay forgotten in the corner, not worth the effort to complete. Taiwan continued scrolling, past the usual offerings. Damaged chip parts, outdated tech units, scrap metal by the kilo. Nothing he could flip for profit. His finger paused over a listing he nearly missed. Cryopod, unidentified origin. Recovered from drift sector KL7. Condition unknown. Starting bid, 500 credits. The image showed only a dark, oblong shape. Most serious buyers would skip past such a vague listing. But something caught Taiwan's eye, faint markings along one edge of the pod. He enlarged the image, squinting. "Those patterns," he whispered. He'd seen similar etchings once before, on a piece of tech that a wealthy collector had paid him 10 times its apparent value to acquire. The collector had called it pre-expansion era, though Taiwan had doubts about that claim. Whatever it was, those markings might indicate valuable materials or technology inside. Taiwan checked his account balance. 2,457 credits, nearly everything he had left. He hesitated, finger hovering over the bid button. 2,000 credits, he said, entering his bid. "Someone will outbid me within the hour, but worth a try." He closed the tablet and stood, stretching his back until it popped. The recycled air in his apartment carried the faint metallic tang common to all space stations. Time to sleep. Tomorrow he'd check which wealthy salvager had outbid him and continue his search for something he could actually afford. Morning came with the artificial lighting cycle. Taiwan's tablet chimed as he was preparing his breakfast. Simple reconstituted protein with flavor additives. He ignored it, assuming it was another debt notice or job rejection. When it chimed again, he swiped to see the notification. His eyes widened. Bid successful. Payment processed. Delivery scheduled. Today, 1400 hours. He nearly dropped the tablet. That's impossible. Taiwan quickly checked the auction listing again. No other bids had come in. The item had sold to him for 2,000 credits, practically his entire savings. Either no one else had noticed the markings, or they knew something about this pod that he didn't. What did I just buy? He wondered aloud, suddenly anxious. The hours until delivery dragged by. Taiwan tried to distract himself by organizing his tools and clearing space in his workshop area. He kept checking the station's arrival log to track the cargo shuttle bringing his purchase. At precisely 1400 hours, his door panel buzzed. The delivery drone outside hovered at eye level, a sealed crate suspended beneath it. "Package for Taiwan Kim," it announced in its flat synthetic voice. "Signature required." He pressed his thumb to the scanner, and the drone deposited the crate just inside his doorway before departing. The crate was larger than he'd expected, nearly 2 meters long and half as wide. Heavier, too, based on how the delivery drone had strained to hold it. Taiwan circled the crate cautiously. The shipping seals looked official, but something about this whole transaction felt off. Why had no one else bid? What was he missing? "Only one way to find out," he muttered. He grabbed his multi-tool and broke the seals, then carefully removed the outer packaging. Beneath was exactly what had been advertised, a cryopod, but not the damaged, ancient relic he'd expected. This pod was sleek, its silver-gray surface unmarred and seemingly new. The mysterious markings he'd noticed in the image ran along its edges, more intricate than he'd realized, swirling patterns that seemed to shift slightly when he wasn't looking directly at them. "This isn't salvage grade," he whispered, running his fingers along its seamless surface. "This is. I don't even know what this is." The pod had no visible control panel, no manufacturer's mark, nothing to indicate its origin. Its design was unlike any human cryopod Taiwan had ever seen, and he'd seen many in his years of salvage work. His touch must have activated something. Soft blue lights flickered to life along the pod's edge, tracing the strange markings. A gentle hum filled the room, building in intensity. "No, no, no." Taiwan backed away, suddenly afraid. "What did I do?" A seam appeared down the center of the pod, releasing a cloud of vapor with a loud hiss. The top half began to rise slowly. Taiwan grabbed the nearest weapon-like tool, a welding torch, and held it ready. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. As the vapor cleared, he saw what lay inside. Not machinery, not valuable tech components he could sell piece by piece. A woman, or something that resembled a woman. Her skin had a subtle blue-silver sheen that shifted with each shallow breath. Her features were delicate, almost human, but just different enough to be unsettling. Her hair, spread around her head like a dark halo, seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Taiwan stood frozen, the welding torch forgotten in his hand. Then her eyes snapped open, revealing pupils that glowed faintly violet in the dim light of his apartment. "What have I done?" Taiwan whispered as those strange eyes focused on him. "What have I bought?" Taiwan stumbled backward as the alien woman sat up in the pod. The welding torch clattered to the floor from his nerveless fingers. His breath came in short gasps, his mind racing to process what was happening. The woman looked around, her movements careful and deliberate. She seemed disoriented but not panicked. When her glowing violet eyes returned to Taiwan, she tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Hello," Taiwan managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can you understand me?" The woman opened her mouth and produced a series of melodic sounds that were clearly speech, but in no language Taiwan had ever heard. She paused, waiting for a response, then frowned when Taiwan just stared at her. She tried again, different sounds this time, equally incomprehensible. Taiwan shook his head. "I don't understand." The woman's shoulders slumped slightly. She looked around the apartment again, taking in the cramped space with its salvaged furniture and scattered tools. Her gaze lingered on the viewport showing the stars beyond. Slowly, she tried to stand. Her legs wobbled beneath her, and she began to fall. Taiwan rushed forward without thinking, catching her before she hit the floor. Her skin felt strangely cool against his, and up close, he could see that what he'd taken for a blue sheen was actually thousands of tiny scales, almost invisible except when they caught the light. "Careful," he said, helping her sit on the edge of the pod. She said something again, her tone suggesting gratitude. Taiwan's mind whirled with questions. Who was she? What species? How had she ended up in an auction listing? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do with her now? The communication panel on his wall chimed suddenly, making them both jump. The woman tensed, eyes wide with alarm. "It's okay," Taiwan said, making a calming gesture with his hands. "Just a message." He crossed to the panel and tapped it. A text notification appeared. "Inspection scheduled. Tomorrow, 900. All residents must be present for quarterly safety check." Taiwan felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Station security would be at his door in less than 24 hours. They would see the alien woman. They would ask questions he couldn't answer. "This is bad," he muttered. The woman was watching him closely, clearly trying to read his reaction. She pointed to herself, then to the pod, then made a gesture as if hiding. "Yes," Taiwan nodded emphatically. "Yes, that might work. You hide in the pod when they come." She shook her head firmly and pointed to the view screen, making a sweeping motion with her hand. "Take the pod away." Taiwan guessed. I can't move it before tomorrow. It's too big to hide. The woman stood again, steadier this time. She approached the pod and pressed her hand against a section Taiwan hadn't noticed before. A compartment slid open, revealing a small device that resembled a silver disc. She removed it and held it out to Taiwan. Hesitantly, he took it. The disc was lighter than it looked, warm to the touch. The woman made a circular motion with her finger. Turn it, Taiwan asked, demonstrating. She nodded. Taiwan rotated the top half of the disc. It clicked softly, and a holographic display appeared above it, showing symbols in the same style as the markings on the pod. The woman pointed to a specific symbol, then to the pod. This controls the pod, Taiwan asked. She nodded again, then made a shrinking motion with her hands. It can make the pod smaller. This seemed impossible, but Taiwan had seen enough strange technology in his years as a salvager to know that advanced tech often seemed like magic. The woman smiled for the first time, revealing teeth that were just slightly sharper than a human's. Following her gestures, Taiwan pressed the symbol she had indicated. The pod began to hum, and before his astonished eyes, it seemed to fold in on itself, panels sliding and rearranging until what had been a 2-meter cryopod was now a compact cube no larger than his hand. Incredible, Taiwan whispered. He carefully picked up the cube. It was surprisingly heavy for its size, but easily concealable. This solves one problem. The woman swayed suddenly, grabbing the edge of Taiwan's desk to steady herself. Her skin had paled, the blue tint becoming more pronounced. Are you sick? Taiwan asked, concerned. He remembered she had just come out of stasis. You need food. Water. He pantomimed, eating and drinking. The woman nodded weakly. Taiwan hurried to his small food preparation area. He had little to offer, just protein cubes, synthetic fruit, and purified water. He arranged some on a plate and brought it to her. The woman examined each item carefully before trying a small bite of the protein cube. She grimaced but swallowed it. The synthetic fruit seemed more to her liking. She drank the water eagerly. As she ate, color returned to her face. Taiwan sat across from her, trying to process his situation. He had spent nearly all his credits on what he thought was valuable salvage. Instead, he had a mysterious alien woman who didn't speak his language, advanced technology he didn't understand, and station security coming tomorrow. What am I going to do with you? He asked quietly. The woman looked up from her meal. Though she couldn't understand his words, she seemed to grasp his meaning. She placed her hand on her chest. Mina, she said clearly. Taiwan blinked in surprise. Mina, is that your name? Mina, she repeated, then pointed at him with a questioning look. Taiwan, he replied, pointing to himself. Taiwan, she echoed, the syllables slightly different with her accent. It was a small thing, this exchange of names, but it changed everything for Taiwan. She wasn't just an alien or a salvage mistake anymore. She was Mina, a person with a name and a story he didn't yet know. Well, Mina, Taiwan said, managing a small smile. I guess we need to figure this out together. Mina smiled back, and for just a moment, the tiny apartment didn't feel quite so hopeless anymore. Taiwan woke with a start, momentarily confused by the figure sitting cross-legged on his floor. Mina was studying his tablet intently, her finger moving across the screen with purpose. 3 days had passed since she had emerged from the pod. 3 days of careful gestures, drawn pictures, and growing frustration as they tried to communicate. What are you doing? He asked, his voice rough with sleep. Mina looked up and smiled. She turned the tablet toward him. On the screen was a basic language learning program Taiwan had downloaded yesterday. Learning, she said carefully, the word accented but clear. Taiwan sat up straighter. You can speak now. Small words, Mina replied. Learning fast. She had been working through the night, it seemed, The program was designed for traders who needed to learn new languages quickly. Taiwan had hoped it might help, but he hadn't expected such rapid progress. "That's amazing," he said, moving to sit beside her on the floor. Mina pointed to the compact cube that had once been her cryopod. This helped too. She pressed a hidden seam, and a small compartment opened, revealing what looked like a translucent headband. Mina placed it on her head, where it adjusted to fit perfectly. "Learning device," she explained. "From my people." Taiwan watched in fascination. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. No wonder the pod had seemed valuable. It was. Just not in the way he had expected. "Your people," Taiwan repeated. "Who are they? Where are you from?" Mina's expression darkened. She struggled for words, then reached for the tablet. She opened a drawing program and quickly sketched a spiral galaxy, then pointed to a spot near one of the outer arms. "Home," she said. Then she made a violent motion with her hand across the drawing. "Gone now." "Gone. What happened?" Mina frowned in concentration, searching for words. "Bad ones came. Hunters. She made a consuming gesture with her hands. "Eat worlds." Taiwan felt a chill run through him. "Eat worlds? You mean they destroy planets?" Mina nodded emphatically. "Yes. Destroy. Take all resources. Kill all people." She reached for the cube again, pressing another hidden section. A small crystal emerged, glowing faintly blue. "Look," she said, holding it out to Taiwan. When he took it, the crystal pulsed once, and suddenly the air above it filled with a three-dimensional projection. Taiwan gasped as he saw a beautiful planet with 3 small moons. The scene shifted to show cities unlike any he had seen, graceful structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being built upon it. Then the image changed again. Massive ships appeared in orbit, their design predatory and angular, a stark contrast to the organic shapes of Mina's world. Beams of energy lanced down from the ships. The beautiful cities crumbled. The very surface of the planet seemed to be stripped away in layers. "Stop," Taiwan whispered, his stomach churning. "Please." Mina took the crystal back, and the projection vanished. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "My family," she said softly. "They put me in sleep pod. Send away. Last hope." "You're a refugee," Taiwan realized. "The last of your kind." Mina shook her head. "Not last. Others escaped too, but scattered. Lost." She touched the crystal again. "This has knowledge. Science. History. Warning." Taiwan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was learning. "These hunters, are they coming here? To human worlds?" Mina nodded slowly. "Yes. Soon. They follow resource trails. Your mining operations. Energy signals. They find you." The implications hit Taiwan like a physical blow. This wasn't just about Mina anymore. This was about the survival of humanity. "We need to warn people," he said. "Show them what you've shown me." Mina's expression became guarded. Careful. "Not all humans good. Some might." She struggled for the word, then pantomimed cutting something apart. "Study me. Take technology. Not help." Taiwan couldn't deny the truth in her words. There were plenty of humans who would see Mina as nothing more than a valuable specimen, her technology as something to be seized and weaponized. He had nearly done the same himself, seeing the pod as just valuable salvage. "I won't let that happen," he promised. "But we need allies, someone who will listen." Mina studied his face carefully, then nodded. "I trust Taiwan." The simple statement caught him off guard. 3 days ago, she had been merchandise to him. Now he felt responsible for her safety, and possibly for warning humanity about a threat they had no idea was coming. "There's someone who might help," Taiwan said after a moment's thought. "An old friend who works in the station's communications hub, but we'll need to be careful." Mina stood up, moving with the fluid grace that marked her as non-human despite her mostly human appearance. She went to the viewport and looked out at the stars. "My star there," she said, pointing to a faint pinprick of light barely visible at the edge of the viewport. "So far now." For a moment, she looked utterly alone, a single survivor cast adrift in the vastness of space. Then she turned back to Tadawon, her chin lifting with determination. "We warn your people," she said, "then find mine. Together, fight hunters." Taiwan nodded, feeling both terrified and strangely hopeful. 3 days ago, he had been a failing salvager with mounting debts and no prospects. Now he stood at the center of something vastly more important. "We'll start with Junhoic Communications," he said. "He works the night shift. Less people around." Mina tilted her head. "Night in space?" she asked, a hint of humor in her voice. Taiwan found himself smiling despite the gravity of their situation. "Station time. An old Earth habit we can't seem to break." Mina smiled back, the glow of her violet eyes softening. "Earth habits. I learned these too." As she returned to her language program, Taiwan watched her with mixed emotions. Fear for the future, yes, but also a growing sense that finding Mina might have been the most important accident of his life. The pounding on Taiwan's door came at 300 station time, startling him from a light sleep. Mina was already on her feet, eyes wide with alarm. In the 2 weeks since they had met with Junho at the communications hub, they had been waiting for something like this. "Customs inspection. Open immediately." The voice was harsh, authoritative. Taiwan put a finger to his lips and motioned Mina toward the hidden compartment they had prepared beneath the floor panels. Her language skills had improved dramatically, but they had agreed it was safer if no one knew of her existence. "One moment." Taiwan called, buying time as Mina slipped into the hiding place, taking the crystal and the cube with her. He smoothed his sleek clothes and tried to look merely annoyed rather than terrified as he pressed the door release. 2 security officers stood in the corridor, their uniforms crisp and their expressions cold. "Taiwan Kim?" the taller one asked, consulting his datapad. "Yes. What's this about?" "It's the middle of the night cycle." "Routine inspection," the officer said, though nothing about this felt routine. "Step aside." The officers entered without waiting for permission, their eyes scanning the small apartment with practiced efficiency. The taller one moved directly to the viewport, checking the seal. The other began opening storage compartments. "Looking for something specific?" Taiwan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Unauthorized technology," the shorter officer replied without looking at him. "We detected unusual energy signatures from this section." Taiwan's heart raced. Mina's devices. They must have been scanning for them. But how did they know what to look for? "I'm a salvager," he said. "I work with all kinds of tech. All properly registered," he added quickly. The taller officer turned from the viewport. "Are you?" "Records show no successful salvage operations in the past 3 months." His gaze was sharp, suspicious. "Yet you recently made a large transaction. 2,000 credits for an item described as unidentified cryopod. Where is this item?" Taiwan forced a casual shrug. "Sold it already. Turned out to be worthless. Just an old medical transport unit. Barely got my credits back." "To whom did you sell it?" "Trader passing through." Didn't catch his name. The officer's expression darkened. "That's convenient." The second officer had reached the area near the hidden compartment. Taiwan tensed as the man's booth stepped directly on the concealed panel. A soft chime from the officer's communication device broke the moment. He checked it, then exchanged a significant look with his partner. "We need to go," he said. "Priority alert." The taller officer nodded curtly. "This inspection isn't over, Kim. We'll be back." They left as abruptly as they had arrived. Taiwan waited until their footsteps faded before rushing to secure the door, and then knelt to open the hidden compartment. "They're gone," he whispered. Mina emerged, her movements graceful despite the cramped space. "They know," she said simply. Taiwan nodded. Someone tracked the pod. Maybe the auction house reported the sale. He ran a hand through his hair. We need to leave. They'll be back with more questions, maybe a proper search team. The alert, Mina said thoughtfully. Something happened. As if in answer to her words, a station-wide announcement blared from the communication panel. Attention all residents. Unknown vessel approaching Station 9. Security protocols activated. All civilians must remain in their quarters until further notice. Mina's face paled, the blue undertones of her skin becoming more prominent. Show me, she said urgently. Taiwan activated his viewport's magnification function, scanning the space beyond the station. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just stars and the occasional transport ship. Then a shadow moved against the stars, a shape that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There, he said, pointing. Mina stared at the shape, her body rigid with tension. Hunter Scout, she whispered. They found me. How? The pod. Trace energy, like your security did. Mina touched the crystal at her neck. This holds much power. They sense it across great distances. The scout ship was moving closer to the station, its angular form becoming clearer. It was unlike any vessel Taiwan had seen before. No visible propulsion system, no standard navigation lights, just a dark, predatory shape sliding through space. We need to warn people, Taiwan said. Junho. No time, Mina interrupted. Get emergency packs. We prepared. Remember the plan. They had indeed prepared, not knowing if the threat would come from station security or something worse. Taiwan grabbed the 2 packs they had hidden in the ventilation shaft, containing food, water, basic tools, and false identification chips Junho had provided. Mina was already at the door to the maintenance corridor, a service passage that ran behind the residential units. Few people knew the access codes, but Taiwan had spent years learning the station's hidden pathways during his salvage work. Wait, Taiwan said as a thought struck him. The hunters, will they attack the station? Mina shook her head. Scout only. Looking. Learning. Her expression was grim. But they will report back. Then hunters come in force. The maintenance corridor was dimly lit and narrow, forcing them to move in single file. Taiwan led the way, guided by memory through the labyrinth of service tunnels. Their footsteps echoed softly on the metal flooring, each sound making him wince. Where we go? Mina asked quietly as they paused at a junction. Lower levels, Section 17. It's been abandoned since the cooling system failure last year. Ha-Sung lives there. Ha-Sung, another friend, former engineer, keeps to himself now. Taiwan checked the corridor. He won't ask questions. They continued downward, the air growing cooler as they descended. The lighting became more sporadic, some sections completely dark. Taiwan used a small light from his pack to guide them. The announcement system couldn't be heard clearly here, just muffled sounds occasionally filtering through the walls. But they could feel the station's tension, the subtle vibration of security barriers being activated, the distant sound of running feet. After nearly an hour of careful navigation, they reached a sealed door marked Section 17, Restricted Area. Taiwan entered a code on the keypad. Nothing happened. They changed it, he muttered, trying another combination. Mina touched his arm and moved him gently aside. She placed her palm against the keypad, and her eyes took on a deeper violet glow. The panel sparked briefly, then the door slid open. How did you? Technology is similar, different words, she explained, like languages. Beyond the door lay a section of the station that looked abandoned. Emergency lighting only, some areas showing damage from the cooling system failure. Taiwan led Mina through the maze of corridors until they reached a reinforced door with a hand-painted symbol beside it. Taiwan knocked in a specific pattern. After a moment, the door cracked open and a single suspicious eye peered out. Taiwan, a gruff voice asked, "What are you doing here?" Need help, Ha-sung. Emergency. The eye shifted to Mena, widened slightly at her unusual appearance, then back to Tadwan. You always bring trouble, Ha-sung said with a sigh, but he opened the door wider. Get in before someone sees you. As they stepped inside Ha-sung's makeshift home, the station's alert system suddenly blared even this far down, the message clear and chilling. Attention all personnel. Unknown vessel has breached outer defenses. Security teams to docking bay 7. This is not a drill. Ha-sung's workshop was a maze of salvaged equipment, half-finished projects, and blinking monitors. The old engineer had transformed this abandoned section into a technological hideaway that rivaled official station facilities. Tadwan had always suspected his friend had access to station systems he shouldn't, and now he was counting on it. So, Ha-sung said, looking Mina up and down, not human, I'm guessing. No, Mina replied simply. My people are called Ardeli. Ha-sung nodded as if encountering aliens was an everyday occurrence. And those things chasing you? Hunters, Tadwan explained. They destroyed her world. Now they've followed her here. Ha-sung sighed, running a hand through his gray-streaked hair. Always knew we weren't alone out here. Never thought first contact would happen in my workshop. He turned to one of his screens. Let's see what we're dealing with. His fingers danced across the control panel, and the screen showed a security feed from docking bay 7. The Hunter scout ship had attached itself to the station's hull, not using any recognizable docking mechanism. It seemed to have simply melded with the station structure. That's not good, Ha-sung muttered. They watched as the security team approached the connection point, weapons ready. A section of the dark ship rippled, and a figure emerged. Humanoid but wrong somehow, its proportions slightly off, its movements too fluid. Before the security team could react, the figure released a cloud of glittering particles. The feed went dead. What happened? Tadwan asked. Ha-sung tried several commands. They've cut the surveillance, but emergency protocols show. His face paled. Life signs in that sector are dropping rapidly. Mina stepped forward, her face grim. They test your defenses. Learn how you fight, how you die. We need to contact Station Command, Tadwan said. Show them what we know. With what evidence? Ha-sung asked. Your word and an alien girl. Mina removed the crystal from around her neck. This shows everything. My world. The Hunters. Their weaknesses. Ha-sung examined the crystal with expert eyes. Impressive tech. But we'd need a secure channel to command, and I don't have that kind of access. Junho does, Tadwan said, if we can reach him. Communications hub is on the main level, Ha-sung warned. High security. Mina's expression was determined. No choice. Hunter Scout reports back soon. Then more come. Taiwan felt the weight of the decision. It had been just 3 weeks since a strange auction listing had changed his life. Now he was planning to risk everything to save a station, perhaps even humanity, from a threat they didn't even know existed. I have maintenance uniforms, Ha-sung said finally. And old access badges. Might get you close enough. 20 minutes later, Tadwan and Mina were moving through the main station corridors, dressed as maintenance workers. Mina's unusual features were partly hidden by a cap and tool belt that drew attention away from her face. Ha-sung monitored their progress through his access to security systems, guiding them via small earpieces. Security checkpoint ahead, his voice warned in their ears. Act normal. They showed their forged badges to the guards, who were distracted by the ongoing crisis. Mina kept her head down, focusing on the datapad in her hands as if reviewing work orders. Communications hub, next left, Ha-sung instructed once they were past. The hub was brightly lit and busy with staff managing the crisis. Junho was at his usual station, his young face tense as he coordinated messages between security teams. Taiwan caught his eye across the room. Recognition, then confusion, Then understanding flashed across Junho's face. He made a small gesture toward a side room used for equipment storage. Once inside the storage room, Junho embraced Taiwan briefly. "You picked a bad day to visit," he said, attempting humor despite his obvious stress. "We know what's happening," Taiwan said. "Mina can explain." Junho looked at Mina with new interest. "The alien you mentioned." Mina handed him the crystal. "Connect to main system." "I show." Junho hesitated only briefly before taking the crystal to a data port. The moment he connected it, the room's lights flickered and a holographic display filled the air between them. Images of Mina's world, the Hunter invasion, and technical data about both civilizations swirled in 3 dimensions. "This is," Junho whispered. "The truth," Mina said. "Hunters destroy worlds. Mine first in this sector. Yours next." The door suddenly opened. They turned, expecting security guards, but instead faced Admiral Song, the station's commanding officer. Her stern face showed surprise, then focus as she took in the holographic display. "Junho, explain," she demanded. Junho straightened to attention. "Admiral, this is crucial information about the unknown vessel. This is Taiwan Kim, and—" He hesitated. "Mina," she supplied. "Last scientist of our Delhi people." Admiral Song studied the holographic data, her experienced eyes quickly assessing the threat. "This scout ship is just the beginning." Mina nodded. "Tests defenses. More come after." The Admiral's face hardened with decision. "Junho, secure channel to Fleet Command." Now, she turned to Mina. "What defenses work against them?" "Specific energy frequencies," Mina explained, manipulating a hologram to show technical specifications. "Their ships absorb most weapons, but certain radiations disrupt their systems." As Junho established the secure channel, the station shuddered violently. Emergency alarms blared. "The scout ship is detaching," an officer reported through the communication system. It's changing shape." "Returning to report," Mina said grimly. "We have little time." Admiral Song took control with the calm efficiency of a veteran commander. "Junho, transmit this data to all fleet vessels. Taiwan, I need you and Mina to work with our engineering team immediately. If we can modify our defenses based on this information." 3 months later, Taiwan stood on the observation deck of the newly designated Alliance vessel Ardeli, watching as the combined human-Ardelian defense fleet assembled. After Mina's transmission had reached surviving pockets of her people in hiding, 7 Ardelian ships had arrived, bearing technology and knowledge that had revolutionized human defenses. Mina joined him at the viewport, her hand finding his. Her role as cultural ambassador had developed into something more, both for their peoples and between them personally. "First Hunter fleet detected at System Edge," she said quietly. 12 hours until they arrive." Taiwan nodded, feeling strangely calm. "Are we ready?" Mina smiled, the violet of her eyes bright with determination. "Together, we stand chance. Alone, neither survive." Admiral Song approached them, her uniform now bearing the new Alliance insignia, a combination of Earth's continents, and the swirling pattern from Mina's pod. "All ships report ready status," she informed them. "The modifications to our weapons systems are complete." Taiwan looked out at the assembled fleet, human and Ardelian vessels side by side, preparing to face an enemy that would have destroyed them separately. "I never thought space junk would save the world," he said with a small smile. Mina squeezed his hand. "Not junk," she replied softly. "Hope." As the fleet moved into formation, the stars beyond seemed to shine brighter, witnesses to a new chapter in the story of 2 civilizations that had found each other just in time.